Hello and welcome to the part 4 of building the application. In this part of the video, we are going to create some functions. So we're going to create functions that will control the compute button payment and also a function that will control the clear button so that it clears all the inputs from the screen. Before I add the code for the function, I want to add the main loop. The loop basically is what is going to run the application. So I'm going to say window dot main loop. All right, so this basically is going to create an event loop that will run the application. The next thing I want to do is add the functions, but I'm going to add them in chunks. So I'll add one function, explain it, and then add the code for another function. So I'm just going to tab here in my code. Because I'm creating a function, the indentation level has to be the same as the other function, which is this DEF. So I'm just going to do a back arrow so as to indent. You can see now the indentation level should be the same as this function or method defined on line number 4. A method is also a function, but a function defined inside a class is regarded as a method. So they both do the same thing, but it depends on where you define it. So I've added this block of code here from line 31 to 42. If you notice, when I created the button on line 26, under the command here, I've put in the name of this function called compute payment. So that is this function here I've defined on line 31. So this is the function that will be called or triggered when this compute payment button is clicked. All right, so if you notice, the indentation level is very important. You can see here this function on line 4, you can see the line of indentation, so you can tell that all this belong to that function. And if I come down here, you can see the def matches that one. So the indentation is very, very important. And then here we can see here that this bit here belongs to that. And you can see all these variables here come under this. So let me run through this function. The name of the function is called compute payment. And inside the parentheses, I've used the keyword self. If you notice here in the button, I've also used self. This enables us to access this method or function from anywhere within the class, so we can access the instance. So line 32 created a variable called monthly payment. I've set that to equals to get monthly payment, and this is a function, this get monthly payment. So this is the opening parenthesis for the function, and this is the closing parenthesis on line 35. So inside this get monthly payment function, I've defined some variables, and the variables basically I want them to be a floating point number. So hence I've got float in front of this too. Float basically is any number that can also include decimal numbers. Okay, so if you enter, say, a decimal number in the input field or a whole number, then the float can accommodate that. Line 35, I've got int. Int is basically a different data type. It stands for integer, which is a whole number. Okay, so these are all the variables. Loan amount variable, annual interest rate variable, number of year variable. These variables, if we look above the code, I've already used these variables elsewhere. You see them here. That is we've got one here that says annual interest rate var, and then we've got the loan var, which is this one on line 19, and number of years which we defined here on line number 17. Because we've got this self in front of it, when we defined it, that means we can reuse those values. So those are the values I'm referencing inside my function. So these here, float, and int, they are all variables for this method of function. Now for line 34 here, I'm getting the value that is being captured for the annual interest rate var. I'm using the get method. Anywhere you see the .get method, we're using that to retrieve a value. So this get method here is going to get whatever value the user enters for the loan amount. Is going to get that, all right? And it's also going to get the annual amount, annual interest rate. Once it gets the value for the interest rate, is going to divide that by this amount, all right? And then here we've got this integer, which is a full number, which is going to represent the value for the number of years you're going to take the loan for. So this .get method is going to capture that value and store it. And then line 38, let me bring that up a bit. Line 37, again, I'm accessing this variable called monthly payment var. I'm using this set function. The set function basically is going to capture the value of this monthly payment and is going to format it. And this is what is going to wait before it displays the amount for the monthly payment. Is going to format it to 2 decimal places, and it can accommodate characters of up to 10 digits in width, but it will format that into 2 decimal places. That's basically what this line of code does. And then the amount that will be displayed for total payment can also be a floating point number. So whatever value is captured from the monthly payment, which is a variable above on line 37, we're going to get that value and multiply it by 12 and then divide that. Okay, we divide that and then we'll multiply that by this value here, by the number of years. Okay, so whatever value is retrieved for the number of years, we're going to multiply that by this value here on line 38, and that will give us the total payment that has to be paid for the loan. And then here again, we are formatting the value using the set function to format whatever value that we're going to display for the total payment. We're going to again do it into 2 decimal places. So any number of characters up to 12 in width we can accept, but we can then format it to 2 decimal places. That's basically what this function is doing. Next, I'm going to add another function that will be responsible for getting the monthly payment. Notice here I've defined a function called get monthly payment. I have not created that yet. I'm going to create that now because I've already specified how I want to use the values from that function inside this function. So now I have to create it. So I've added another function here, line 43 through to line 49. So you can see here the indentation level is the same, very important. If not, the code will not work. So I've created a function here, get monthly payment, because I used it here on the other function on line 32. So this function get monthly payment here, I have passed in some variables or some argument. So again, we've got the self keyword. So I'm using the loan amount, the monthly interest rate, and the number of years. So these are all the variables I'm passing in to this function called get monthly payment. So the monthly payment, which is one of the values, I'm setting that to equals to the loan amount multiplied by the monthly interest rate. So in order to get the monthly payment for the loan, I'm going to multiply the amount of the loan by the monthly interest rate, and then we're going to divide that, and inside the parentheses we're using 1 minus 1 slash, this is divide, slash is divide. So anywhere you see a slash, that's a division. Okay, and the fact that I put this in parentheses, when you put things in parentheses, then this takes precedence. So what, by placing this part in parentheses, it will compute this part first before it does the division. So when you are doing some mathematics or arithmetic operations, anything in parentheses gets actioned first before anything else. So this part will be calculated first before this part, and it will return the value for the monthly payment. The final function I want to add is the function that is going to be responsible for clearing all the input on the screen. So on line 27 here, I added inside the clear button that is going to call, this command will call a function called delete underscore all. So that's the function I need to create now. So when that button is clicked, it will trigger that function. So I've now added the final function, which is the delete underscore function, which is the function I specified here on line 27. So it's a very straightforward function. What this self here basically means, we are accessing instances of all these variables. All these variables here, monthly payment, loan amount, annual interest rate, number of years, total payment, all these variables have already been defined above in other functions. I'm able to access those values by using this self keyword in front of the variable names. So I'm using the set method to set the values to blank. This quotes here inside the parentheses just means set whatever values you have for all these to blank values. All right. And the reason we are using the set method is because the string var, this string var here, does not have a delete attribute. So we can use a dot delete. Hence we're using the set function to set whatever values that were stored in all these variables to set them to blank. So that is basically the code completed. So I'm just going to click File and Save. There's just one more thing I need to do, which is call the class. All right, you can see everything here is under this class called Loan Calculator. So I need to call the class. You can see where the cursor is flashing. That is where I need to reference the class. So the name is called Loan Calculator. So when you have a class or a function, you have to call it in order to access it. So I'm referencing the class there. So I'm just going to do a file and save. So we've got the main loop, which is the event loop that enables the application to run on line 29. And then we've got the function, the actual class, which contains all our functions or methods. All right. So that is it. Let's click File and Save. And in the next video, we will test the application. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.